Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim, and our guest today is Jared Teele. So, Jared, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
Yeah, hey, so first off, thanks for having me on. And my name is Jared Teele, and I live in Austin, Texas. I'm the founder and CEO of Terrashroom. What we do is we created these automated mushroom growing computers. It's an intelligent IoT device that helps anyone, anywhere grow mushrooms with zero experience. So we've just made the whole mycology experience very, very easy for people that are interested in it.
Awesome. So, how did you get into it? Was it like more like a hobby for you, or like what gave you this idea?
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty funny, I guess, story roundabout. But so I actually grew up in the Dallas area, and I grew up in, you could say like it's in the Bible Belt, right? So very devout, religious household. Went on multiple mission trips and such. I had my first sip of alcohol at 21. But I was always very, very curious about mushrooms. And so that basically led to, in college, I was just doing a big deep dive into what mushrooms look like. And it was just like little things, some of the research that I would see. It was like, I saw a Harvard study that was like 70% of the participants said that mushrooms were in the top 5 most impactful life experiences, next to the birth of their firstborn and the day they got married. People like Tim Ferriss have said, quote, almost without hesitation, every single billionaire I personally know uses mushrooms on a regular basis. I mean, there's just a lot of supporting evidence. So yeah, in college, I just started, just got on Reddit, different forums, just kind of figured out the whole process. And that's really like where it started about 7-8 years ago now.
Awesome. So, it was like just more of a hobby that you were just curious about. And then, how did it actually go from that to turning into like an actual business and like selling like your products to other people?
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, what really happened was my entire life I've been in sales. So, during the pandemic, I was working for Unity, the game engine, and then one of my old bosses actually recruited me to work for a Y Combinator health tech startup, and so I was working as a sales director there, and we grew the company from 0 to $12 million in ARR, and you'd think it would be this really monumental moment of like, oh, this is awesome. We hit these massive goals. Like there should be a lot of excitement, but actually instead I felt this sense of dread. And like, if this is it, like, this is not super exciting. And I don't think I want to be in the sales game, because I would interface with the product team regularly just as friends, but also some like, projects and stuff that they would need some input on. And I realized very quickly I wanted to go in the product development side of things. And so that being said, I thought about it for a second, and I really just knew that I wanted to build something that was like tangible, something that could really impact the lives of humans at scale, but also in a meaningful way. I wasn't really privy to just doing like a SaaS app or, something that just was a pure digital product that, I don't know, I think I was looking for purpose. But basically, that being said, really there's like this turning point in my life. I had some people very close to me that I thought, man, like they could really, really benefit from mushrooms, just, the research on anxiety, depression, just a lot of the mental health disorders. So the question I ultimately just asked myself is, could you make something that would make it so easy, seamless, and attractive that someone that, whether they're 18 years old or 80 years old, they could not only grow mushrooms, but do it in a way that is very appealing. And so what I just did is I just locked myself in, did like a 3-day hackathon weekend, bought a 3D printer. I was at IKEA, I bought one of these like glass domes for like $15. And it really just went from there. And it started off, with very much this like easy little hackathon project. But then where this actually got very interesting was I made this prototype, and in my kitchen, there's a big window, and it gets really beautiful golden hour or like evening sun. What actually ended up happening was I just threw up like a sheet, made like a photo curtain essentially out of it on the kitchen table. Just took some pictures of this prototype, threw up a landing page on Shopify, and I don't gamble. I've never really gambled in my entire life, and I just decided to throw like $20 into ads in it. And I mean, I was freaking out. I was thinking, I've never done this before. I feel like I'm just wasting money. But very quickly, I saw some like results, and I remember it was funny because it was a Sunday afternoon, and I'm just doom scrolling. I'm in the bathroom, just sitting on the toilet, and it's like three pre-orders came in. I was like, I just made like 150 because we were doing $50 pre-order deposits, and I was like, I just made like $150. And it was a very wild experience. But basically from that moment, then it was the process of really building the product. And we went through so many iterations. I mean, we're talking hundreds of iterations and raised some money. And I think what got really, really interesting was, I was at this point that before I raised money, I spent all my savings. I actually moved out of my place because my friend was like, I know you're thinking about moving to either San Francisco or Austin, and I got a spare bedroom. While you're figuring stuff out, you can just crash there. So I was sleeping on an air mattress and for about the better part of a year, and just building this business. We finally really started cranking. I got some help on the media buying side, and I mean, it was just the wildest thing. It was like we started raising money, and then we were doing like up to like $7,000 a day in these pre-order deposits. And keep in mind, these are just $50 deposits of like a $200. They would have to pay a remaining balance of $200. So it was just night and day difference. I mean, it was just like, okay, there's very clear some semblance of product market fit. There's some semblance of like huge consumer demand. But that being said, though, I mean, just because you can sell a product, making it, that was really the hard part. And things really turned around because I went through a couple CTOs and product development firms. And I mean, what I would just consistently find is there's either a lack of drive, a lack of technical skill, or with a lot of these like product development firms, their interest is making the project as complicated and bloated as possible so they can get more billable hours.
Right.
And I just realized, I really needed to build a team. So I brought on James. He's our head of product. I mean, he's a young guy, just been an absolute monster. Spent like the better part of a year in China getting all the manufacturing figured out. But I mean, we're finally now on the tail end. So we have the first mass production run manufactured. It's in our Austin warehouse. We've shipped out about half of those. We have mass production 2 that is slated, to get shipped out in the new year from China. And I mean, we're just cranking. We actually just aired on Shark Tank on November 6th. So it's just been a really wild journey since then.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously being on Shark Tank is always awesome. It's great exposure.
Yeah.
But as of now, right? So everything you're selling is D2C, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like, what's kind of like your vision? Do you want to stick to that channel? Do you want to be in retail, maybe like partner with medical offices? Like, where do you kind of see your products going?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think what we're seeing is, I mean, the mushroom space is just getting so big. And I think people, it's very similar to Tesla. And what Elon said is, it's like he has not spent any money on marketing simply because EVs, they have lower center of gravity, better acceleration, there's more crumple space, so it's safer. I mean, it's generally just a better product. And I think when you look at mushrooms, it's functionally a better product. And so D2C, I mean, it's super low lift just to get things off the ground. You run some Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and it works. We're seeing, I mean, this is a very visual product, and we're actually teeing some stuff up for 2025 to get into retail. We think that's an excellent channel. Definitely with things like partnerships. I mean, there's a lot on the roadmap that we're like, okay, this is just the beginning, and things are about to get pretty spicy. So
for sure. I guess like in terms of retail, do you have like certain types of retailers where you think, because I mean, obviously there's like your product wouldn't be a fit in every type of retailer. So it's kind of like,
certainly.
What are the kinds that you think, would be a good fit?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're probably going to see, we've talked to some is, I mean, the lowest hanging fruit is like smoke shops, vape shops. I mean, there's about 15,000 of them in the US. We've talked to some people that have like dispensaries. I mean, there's just so much product market fit for what we're doing. And then also the customer avatars that we don't sell anything like psychoactive. We want to operate a really clean business. We're just selling atoms and bits. We're just a hardware company. But really at the end of the day, we're seeing that. So that's what I think we're going to get into initially. We do think that some of these specialty plant shops, there's definitely some lift there. Big box retailers, we're probably a little bit early, and we're probably gonna have to make a V2 to make something that's a little bit more for like the unit economics. That would make sense. But for where we're at right now, yeah, I mean, I just think the whole smoke shop, vape shop, dispensary model, like we could do very well.
For sure. And when it comes to actually like running your ads, like getting like your message out there, I mean, obviously you have many people who understand what your product is. There's
Sure.
also, I think most Americans still are not super informed about like what mushrooms are all about. So like,
Yep.
how do you go about that education piece?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, I'm not going to act like we get a gold star for the education piece. I mean, I think what we did is we've engineered a good product that is attractive and it largely sells itself to the people that are familiar with the industry. I think that's going to be our next journey is how do we get the product positioning, product messaging really clear, really crisp, and we can basically advocate to those people that have never considered that are now looking at adopting a new consumer behavior.
For sure. And I guess like in terms of your customer avatar, right? Because you mentioned these people who might frequent smoke shops. I guess like
Right.
what else do you kind of see in terms of like your, customers who have actually purchased your product?
Yeah, I mean, so the range is kind of, it's a pretty wide spectrum what we've seen. I mean, we've seen everything from you have these tech bros that either work like in tech, finance, consulting, and they enjoy mushrooms, we could say that. We're seeing this huge lift in this like California sober movement or this really movement with these like what we just call them is these like California soccer moms where you see a lot of times postpartum depression is very real. You see a lot of moms, they generally have historically coped with like wine or other SSRIs, but they're just seeing that it's like, this is not working. And friends talk and they say, I tried this. I really think you should try it as well. It's natural, non-addictive. I mean, I think there's just so much about it that it really is like this complete health and wellness system that is very approachable to the nature lover, I guess you could say. And I think one trend that we thought is very, very interesting as well is for the first time this year, it was really over about the summer, cannabis sales surpassed alcohol sales in the US.
Oh,
And that's a
wow.
very, very strong indicator of where things are going. And the thing that's, with what we're seeing is cannabis doesn't offer that many medicinal benefits, unlike mushrooms. I mean, it's sweeping. So that's where we're pretty bullish on the long-term future for that. But in terms of customer avatars, yeah, I mean, it's a very wide net, but generally it's just kind of like the tech bros, California soccer moms. Those are like two groups that were like they seem to really like the product.
Yeah, I think especially young people. I mean, like I'm 31, but I think people even
Yeah,
my age, like or younger, are kind of, drinking less and less compared
yep,
to previous generations. So it's definitely, I think,
absolutely.
a good product for that market.
Yep.
So like, you mentioned earlier, right, that you just aired on Shark Tank, and I'm
Yeah.
curious, like always about like, Shark Tank. We've had other guests who are on the show.
Yeah.
Like, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it's a lot, a lot of prep. It's like working two full-time jobs for periods, and I mean it was crazy because it's like I literally got back from China a couple days later. I'm on a flight to LA to Hollywood to record it. I mean it was tough, but it's a lot of work. I mean you have to apparently every season they have 40,000 applicants, and it's pretty tough. It's pretty cutthroat, but ultimately where we got. We had a very, very nice bump in sales. The long tail of it, because everything is switched from daytime or regular television to Hulu and Netflix. So it's like we're seeing a nice long tail of reruns and watches. But that being said, yeah, you just spend so much time with every single detail. Sony Pictures they have made an incredible amount of money through Shark Tank, and it is probably one of the most well-run operations I've seen in a very long time. And they're
Right.
very picky about the details and what goes into it, which is good.
Yeah, because I've always been like told that it's like actually much longer, like, several hours of negotiation, but they just cut it
Yeah.
into like 10 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and I think if, we're being honest, like showbiz has to do their thing. They have to cut it and edit it. I mean, at the end of the day, we got an offer from Mr. Wonderful. The thing is, we've obviously raised from investors. It would have been a price round, and it's Shark Tank. It's a low ball offer, and we declined him. But it's just kind of funny because I think the way that in the post production, the edits, they made it seem a little bit, we'll just say, they wanted the wow factor more. So it's just funny when I watch it. I'm like, that's not exactly how it went whatsoever.
Right. Yeah.
It's a good
Yeah.
story, I guess. So
They have a narrative for sure.
exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, like obviously you've been growing, you have big plans for next year. So if we have this conversation again in 1 year from now, where do you see things going for your business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, obviously we're at the end of 2024, going into 2025, doing some planning, some like, reviews of what happened. I mean, I can tell you right now, so much of the focus this year has just been manufacturing, getting these product out. Right now, I think we're like looking at like it's a less than 1% defect rate with the product that we're shipping out, which in hardware, like for a first time product launch, like you generally don't see that. And it's just because we want to operate things well. But going into next year, I mean, we just have a lot of stuff on the roadmap. Obviously, growth, retail is a big focus. We're thinking, additional product launches. We're definitely looking at partnerships. I don't want to give too much, but at the end of the day, just grow bigger, build better products, and just serve more people.
For sure. So if you could go back in time to before you got started, like what is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
Oh man. Just one. I think starting from a position of strength, my biggest regret is not raising more capital sooner and really just swinging for the fences. I think hardware, you don't realize how long things take, you don't realize how expensive they are. So I would believe what people told me, i.e., like manufacturers or, working with some of these product design agencies are like, oh yeah, this will take 2 months and it will cost 30K. And I'm like, great. It ends up taking almost 18 months. And, for the tooling itself is like somewhere in the ballpark of like 200K. And you're just like,
Right.
okay, this is not. So point being is I just wish I would have been a lot more aggressive on fundraising and starting from a position of strength rather than just, I know the whole build in publics, bootstrap, scrappy startup is it's a great story when it works, but the thing you got to think about is how do you manage morale, emotions, and produce the least amount of stress as possible? And I think generally fundraising is a really good answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, especially in hardware. I mean, just to your point, like we've worked with hardware companies. It's you constantly have to keep raising because it's
Yeah.
so labor intensive, so cost. I
Yep.
mean, yeah, so cost prohibitive.
Exactly. Exactly. Well said. Yeah. It's hardware is not for the faint of heart. So
Exactly. Awesome. So if somebody watching this show wanted to reach out to you, do you mind sharing your website or social media? I guess
yeah,
best
yeah.
ways
So
to.
well, our website is so if you want to check us out, you can type in www.terrashroom.io. You can look us up on social media if you want to get in contact with me personally. I am most active on Twitter, and my Twitter is Steele, my last name, Steele_Jared, Jared. Yeah, and if you want to shoot me an email as well, I mean, my email is my first name at terrashroom.co. I love to connect with people, and ultimately, I just want to, if there's other founders listening or people that are thinking about getting in hardware or anything, like happy to give some advice where I can.
Awesome. Well, Jared, thanks so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks, Dan.